In the first week of April 2026, an anime nobody was hyping started a worldwide conversation. Within 48 hours of its premiere, it was trending in 3 countries. Within a week, it had debuted at number 36 on the global streaming chart, only 2 places below where Frieren peaked. Critics, animators, and rival studios all reached the same conclusion at once. Hat Atelier is quietly destroying every other show in spring 2026, and the reasons for it go far past good animation. Hat Atelier is the anime adaptation of the manga by Kamome Shirahama, a manga that has been quietly praised by industry artists for years as one of the most beautifully drawn books in the entire medium. For 7 years, the question among manga readers was whether any studio could ever animate Shirahama's art without ruining it. The pages are dense, the line work is fine, almost architectural. Every panel has the patience of a print. Most adaptations would have flattened it. The new anime produced by Studio Bug Films with support from Crunchyroll did not flatten it, it translated it. The story follows Coco, a young girl with no magical talent in a world where magic is everything. She is a seamstress's daughter living in a remote town, and she has spent her entire childhood watching witches pass through the streets and feeling completely outside of their world. One evening, she stumbles into a forbidden book, accidentally writes a magic glyph she should never have known, and triggers a transformation that ruins her entire life in a single afternoon. A witch named Qifrey discovers what she has done. Instead of punishing her, he takes her in as a quiet apprentice at his atelier, far from the official magical authorities, where she begins to learn the rules of a world she was never meant to enter. That is the surface plot. What separates Hat Atelier from every other fantasy anime running this season is what the show does underneath that plot. Magic in this world is not an inherited bloodline. It is not a chosen one mechanic. It is craft. To cast a spell, a witch has to draw a glyph on physical paper or fabric. The shape of the line, the steadiness of the hand, the choice of ink, all of it determines what the spell does and how far it reaches. In other words, in Hat Atelier, magic is just a beautifully complicated kind of drawing. And the show makes the audience feel it. Coco is not learning to chant. She is learning to draw. This is the second great trick of the adaptation. The animators at Bug Films understood that the manga's art was the point, so they decided not to compete with it. They decided to embody it. The anime is hand-drawn in a style that imitates Shirahama's inkwork, with thick contour lines, unhurried compositions, and a color palette that looks like aged watercolor paper. There is almost no CGI backgrounds. Breathe. Crowd scenes feel painted. Every spell sequence is a moving illuminated manuscript. Animators on Twitter and Reddit have spent the last 3 weeks posting frame-by-frame breakdowns, and the consensus is that nothing else airing in 2026 looks like this. The score deepens the effect. The composer is Yuka Kitamura, the same woman who scored most of From Software's Dark Souls trilogy. That choice sounded strange on paper. Why hire the queen of brutal Souls music to score a wholesome girl learns magic anime? The answer became clear in the second episode. Kitamura's strings soar without warning under quiet emotional moments and pull back to silence whenever Coco doubts herself. The same composer who once made hopelessness sound enormous now makes the smallest hand movement feel weighted. Critics at Crunchyroll News and Anime News Network have called it the best anime score of the decade so far. What pushed Hat Atelier over the edge into global word of mouth was not just craft, it was timing. Spring 2026 is a brutal season. Jujutsu Kaisen Season 3 is airing. Frieren has a sequel arc in production. Several other heavyweight adaptations launched in March. By every reasonable estimate, a fantasy anime about a girl learning to draw magic had no business breaking through, and yet within 48 hours of release it did. The Crunchyroll global chart placed Hat Atelier at number 36 worldwide, only 2 slots below Frieren's all-time peak. Reddit's main anime subreddit ran a daily discussion thread that hit 10,000 comments by episode 2. Letterboxd-style anime tracking apps reported it as the highest-rated premiere of the year so far. The viewership pattern reveals something interesting. The show is not winning the way most shonen anime win. There is no signature fight scene that goes viral. There is no flashy trailer cut. The clips that travel best are quiet. A 2-second moment of Coco picking up a quill, a close-up of ink soaking into paper, a shot of the atelier in evening light. These are clips that should not work as social media content, and they are working anyway. People are watching this anime the way they used to watch films, slowly on purpose, in silence. There's also an emotional layer the anime understands without ever spelling it out. Coco's central problem is not that she lacks talent. Her central problem is that she has spent her whole childhood feeling like a person magic decided to leave behind. Hat Atelier is a story about a girl who refuses to accept being excluded from a beautiful world. And in 2026, that hits a generation of viewers who feel locked out of the version of life they were promised. Critics have begun calling it the most quietly political anime in years, not because it argues for anything explicitly, but because it insists every episode that a person who was never meant to learn can still learn. The show treats access to beauty as a kind of right. That is rare in any medium, let alone in a fantasy adaptation. There is also the matter of the women. Witch Hat Atelier's adult cast is almost entirely female. The witches who teach Coco are written without male approval as their compass. They argue with each other, they have careers, opinions, ambitions, and rivalries. In an industry where female ensembles are still routinely written as appendages to a male protagonist, this casting feels like a quiet correction. Veteran animation critics at Polygon and Anime Feminist have written several long pieces in the last 2 weeks, praising how the show treats its mentor characters as people first and archetypes second. None of these characters wait for a man to validate them. They are too busy teaching. For the wider anime industry, Witch Hat Atelier is now a benchmark. Studios that have spent the last 5 years competing on power scaling and brutal fight choreography are watching a fantasy show win the season on line work, silence, and emotional honesty. There are reports from Tokyo that other production committees have begun pulling adaptation projects out of CGI-first studios and placing them with hand-drawn houses in response. The episode budgets at Bug Films are reportedly the highest the studio has ever recorded, and the team has already been signed for the second season. For viewers, Witch Hat Atelier is the answer to a question many had stopped asking: whether modern anime, in an era of streaming algorithms and viral clips, can still be made the way the medium was originally made. With patience, with ink, with a story that earns its emotion. The answer after 12 weeks of quiet domination is yes. Spring 2026 will be remembered as the season Witch Hat Atelier rewrote what an anime hit looks like. Coco is just learning her first glyph. The audience is already watching the future of the medium being drawn one line at a time.